Up next, it's the latest from the Dayton, Ohio band Brainiac, who in their 4-year history is open for, among others, Breeders, Jesus Lizard, Unsane, and Girls Against Boys. Here it is, Timmy Taylor and the guys.
Like, it felt like you might get zapped if you touched them, you know? Like they were Brainiac, you know? There was this, like, they sizzled.
I didn't know you could do it like that. Legends and myths behind it. Like, they set the standard, they set the bar really high. They had so much momentum.
That band, the fervor was insane.
Watch that right as they arrived at that moment.
Meanwhile, it was a bad news week for fans of the rising indie band Brainiac, whose lead singer, 28-year-old Tim Taylor, was killed in an early morning single-car crash near his home in Dayton, Ohio last Friday. Brainiac was being courted by the majors at the time of Taylor's death.
Hello, my name's Tim. This is my second cousin, Tyler Trent, and we're with the group Brainiac. I'm sorry.
My name's Tony Youngblood. I already mentioned. All right.
I'd like to introduce you to our bass player, Monasterio.
Hi. Buenas noches. Monasterio. Cool. I'm in a band. You're probably one of our biggest influences, as a matter of fact.
I like it,
song
all
is
right.
good. I don't know. I think in 20 years, people are still going to be listening to it. That's the thing.
So.
But with that, every time
We
I
just
listen
need more
to
people like you to rip us off, and that'll sort of give us more credibility.
Yeah.
Keep the myth alive.
And now, at last, we turn the stage over to those mad geniuses. Hybrids, half conservatory trained and half trained in the College of Hard Rock. I'm not quite sure what they're going to do with this music, and wherever they take it, whether you approve or not, one thing is sure, it's going to be fun. And who knows, it may even be beautiful.
Hello. Dear Brainiac, I miss you. You were a symbol of a dream and an explosive energy that meant everything then and still now. And I still describe it like this to this day. Brainiac, the perfect symmetry of energy between childhood friends from Dayton, Ohio. Devo Robots meets punk rock James Brown in a one-of-a-kind new wave industrial band. There is no other band like Brainiac. Timmy Taylor, you were terribly missed. There is a quiet place in my heart held for you that will never disappear the way you did to the outside world. A Brainiac torch burns every day for all of us that have it. And I can see yours and it is burning very fucking bright tonight. Thank you.
So, Tim, you say you and your buddies are going to visit one of Jupiter's moons. Yeah. Well, how do you suppose you're going to do that?
Well, I don't know if you've heard about it or not, but they have this new type of gum out. And all it requires is that you learn how to blow a bubble, and you too can space travel.
The first day of 5th grade, I just have some memory of Tim walking down the hall, like clapping his hands and saying, "Quasimodo, Quasimodo." And I didn't even know who Quasimodo was. I thought he'd made that name up, and I was like, man, that is such a cool word. And then we pretty much just started hanging out all the time. Right away, we were just interested in the same things. We like comic books and music and, yeah, just weirdos.
Tim, you know, he always had the creativity going on, even as a kid. Then he started playing cello in the 5th grade, and Juan was his bandmate.
I remember we got in front of the school and we had to do like this duet. You know, we'd practiced it forever, and I just got up there and I saw the thing and I just like blanked. So Tim kind of played the song and got us through it, which is just amazing to me because like Tim was like an amazing musician.
He listened to everything. I remember he loved the Beatles, but he listened to everything from Charlie Parker, Ella Fitzgerald to classical. He'd go to the library and bring home lots of classical records and just kind of listen to them and study the sounds.
Timmy was pretty much a prodigy. Coming from parents like Terry and Linda, he was inundated with music.
Growing up, I started piano when I was 6, and then I also played cello.
It's amazing. Like, Linda is a cellist. Terry is an accomplished jazz musician, you know, both well-respected in their fields, and we have Tim.
Just to turn 19, and I went to hear Terry play one night, and I was just really impressed with his talent.
Man, he was just a brilliant guitarist. He'd go into a solo, they give him a solo, and a half hour later, you know, their jaws are all dropping, and, you know, then they all come back in. But, you know, he took it a lot of places, so.
I think what really impressed me was there was some drunk that just kept pestering me, poking me, and trying to get my attention. And I remember Terry grabbed this guy by the arm and says, "You touch her one more time and I'll break your arm." So I was in love. Back in those days, he was on the road more than he was home. He said, "Come and join me, and we're going to do this. We're going to get married." So I said, okay. So I took a Greyhound bus to Butler, Pennsylvania, because that's where he was on a job at that point.
What was the urgency?
Timmy. This was Tim's favorite place to sit when he was a baby, his dad's guitar case. It was usually open because Terry was always playing. Tim just loved to sit there and listen to him play. So when Tim was about 3, Terry bought him a drum set. And it wasn't a toy drum set, it was a nice drum set. And that's how he learned how to read drum notation, he learned how to read rhythm, and basically how to read music.
My dad is so talented, my mom is so talented, and my brother was so talented. It's something that I just, like, couldn't believe.
I think he was bit with the showbiz bug at an early age. I remember him entertaining a lot of the kids out in the driveway one day. I think he was about 6, and he had a Cheech and Chong record. There was a song on there that was a little dirty that I didn't know he knew until I was watching him hold court in the driveway with about 6 of the neighborhood kids singing this song. And I was going downtown, gonna see my gal, gonna sing her a song, gonna show her my ding-dong. And I said, Tim, get in here. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have parents calling me. So, yeah.
His sense of humor was so dry but so goofy.
Do you know the words to the familiar pop melody, Mary Had a Little Lamb?
Very unique, but you knew he was super, super smart just talking to him, you know.
Tim had a jazz background. He had heard records that none of us had heard until our adult years when we decided to go listen to Coltrane, but he is immersed in that.
My brother and my dad were in a band with Michael Bashaw.
Michael Bashaw is a phenomenal musician. But he's also nationally known for his music sculptures.
Tim was actually still in high school when he started playing with us. He was 16 years old. Terry asked Timmy to play. We called the group The Bridge. First time I heard him play, I mean, I knew he could really play.
I think Tim really loved playing with his dad like that, and he learned so much.
Timmy brought his own stuff to the group, too. Timmy said, I got this line I've been fooling with. It became a song called The Lazarus Effect.
This is called The Lazarus Effect. I'm gonna try to raise the dead here.
He had this line he played, is ba-ba-ba, ba-da-dum-bum-bum-bum-bum, ba-ba-ba. You know.
Tim could have gone on and just played in a jazz band with his dad the rest of his life. But the thing that being in a jazz band didn't provide for him was creating like an entire package.
When he was in high school, he played the drums, he played the bass, he learned how to play the guitar. He was so versatile in all of the different instruments that he could play. And I think he realized at a very young age that it was better to stand out.
Dayton is a unique mix. You went to school in Dayton and half your friends were locals, like the natives, and we're Briars. The other half were the children of either military personnel or like civilian contractors from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Wright-Patterson, our country's most important military installation.
All of us in town who were creative or alternative or different, we found each other really quickly. Juan and Tim found each other.
We would try to make music. We would try to do things with like drum machines and like keyboards. We tried to do the goth thing, even though maybe it was a little bit more glam. We'd never play out, and we'd sort of never gather up other people. It was always just me and him.
They had been trying to come up with something. They were clearly like going through mutations.
Tim started playing with the guys that ended up being in the Whiz Bangs.
Whiz Bangs were, I don't know, it wasn't my kind of thing at all.
And then Tim sort of forced them to let me be in the band too.
Why are they doing this? Like bad kind of Chili Peppers.
Musically, I don't think we were ever that really into it. And it was still somebody else's thing. And I think we were getting closer to a point where we wanted to do our own thing.
But I remember Tim had like like one of those big harmonicas like Stevie Wonder played, like with all the notes. And it was like, yeah, it was incredible. Like, wow, like he should be the front guy for everything. And we just kind of stole the show.
And I just remember it was a popular band, but we just didn't like it. I was just like, what am I doing? I quit. I'd rather fail trying to make something that like is something that I like than sit there and be loved for something that your heart's not in. And I remember Tim kind of like shyly asked me, he's like, well, do you want to do another band? And I was like, really? Like, you want to be in another band with me? Like, because I kind of felt like I blew it. He got me in that band, and then I was like, fuck this, I don't want to do this. And then Tim was like, well, if you quit, I quit. And I was like, yeah. And then we just got really excited. when Whiz Bangs ended, I was like, okay, we're gonna do this thing. If we're gonna do it, then we really gotta do it. Then we started thinking about who do we want to be in this band? You had to have a great drummer. Like, as long as you had a great drummer, you could be a great band. I mean, I don't know how old Tyler was. I mean, for all I know, he was 19 years old. I don't know, but maybe he was still in high school. He looked like he was 12, and that was the thing. We used to call him the kid. It's like the boy genius kind of thing. I just remember he was around, and he was the kid.
So we just kind of arranged kind of a tryout, which was a trip because both Tim and Juan had like hair down to their butts. Tim had on like this black leather jacket with like a faux rabbit fur vest over top of it. And they both just looked amazing and like rock stars, and I was so intimidated.
I don't really remember him being nervous. I just remember him being great, like right from the get-go. And it's like when we got Tyler, we just knew he was it. So Michelle,
The Bodines. They're such a big deal in Dayton.
Michelle and her brother were local fixtures.
We cruise around and look for parties and just pull out our equipment and just start jamming at parties, you know. And
they grew up with a Les Paul of their dad's and a Marshall stack next to their crib.
Scott and I figured that we're at least fifth generation guitar players. My grandma and Grandpa Bodine were in a band together. Funny story, they would go to these chicken fights, and they were like the music for the chicken fights.
Seriously?
Yes. That's crazy.
What kind of music do they play at chicken fight?
They played like boogie-woogie kind of stuff, so.
And even in a town full of rockers, you'd notice her right away.
Besides her being super talented, there weren't always a lot of females in the bands back then.
And she was no poser. She could hang with any of them, and she can really play guitar.
She just personified perfect chick guitarist at that time.
Tim just came up to me one time at a show and asked me if I wanted to play with him and Juan.
The people you were with, you know, they bring more to it than just their musical ability. Because being in a band is so much about personalities and like that sort of like the sort of chemical interaction between people that make, you know, the music.
We had a lot of bands that we just loved.
If I was gonna trace the sort of path of the way it went,
I know we listened to a lot of Sonic Youth.
The Stooges.
The Cure.
We liked Jawbox.
And Bauhaus.
I like New Wave.
That jazz stuff was a big deal.
The Beastie Boys.
Joy Division.
Led Zeppelin, the AC/DC, and the Black Sabbath.
Nation of Ulysses.
I love Devo.
I mean, and we were definitely interested in funk.
I didn't think they'd want to listen to the heavier stuff like I liked.
Cycle Sluts from Hell. Transposes over keys, I'd be like, do it like a dog, do it like a dog.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I listened to.
We sort of had some broad ideas about what it might be, and then, you know, that sort of progressed. But what were we talking about? Sorry.
Tim and Juan already had some songs written a little bit. Well, mainly it was Tim that wrote everything, but they had them worked out, and so they showed them to me.
I think the very first song I played to kind of try out was I Could Own You. And that's when I just knew, wow, this is incredible.
When I first moved in with those guys, they still rehearsed in our basement. And I couldn't believe that what was coming out from the floorboards.
You know, we knew he was working on something, but had no idea.
Tim wrote songs like probably every day. He had a new song almost every practice.
He would basically come with the songs completely done with all the parts for everybody to play. And he'd be like, the beat is like this. This is the guitar part. Here's what the bass is like. And he would have it sort of all worked out in his mind. We sort of put all those pieces together, and we had a list of names. So I think the names on there were Sheezus.
One name that I remembered was We'll Eat Anything.
Pop Gun.
The girl who met Ozzy, because Michelle had just recently met Ozzy.
And then Brainiac, and I got that out of a comic book price guide that I bought when I was into comic books. And we pretty much unanimously picked Brainiac.
Like when Brainiac started, because of all the electro funk in the early 80s, like Dayton, it was so prominent. By like 1990, there's just all these Moogs like sitting in the pawn shop that weren't cool anymore. And Tim snatched them up.
Having that keyboard, he would sound out Prince songs for hours and hours. I'm like, but stop that. It would make you crazy. You'd do the same song for like 2 hours, you know, because it was so fascinating to him. I think that got his charge started, getting that keyboard.
I mean, I just thought he was like a musical genius, really. I mean, he could play pretty much anything, and he could sing, and he had these great ideas.
Tim was on his own artistic journey to the point of even resisting us sometimes. Tim would do this thing, and I think Tyler will tell you about this too.
He'd bring a new song to practice, and it would be like really catchy.
And then you'd be like, oh my God, it's so cool.
I mean, just like an instant overnight success.
And he'd be like, oh yeah? And then that song would just disappear.
And then just slowly deconstruct it into a Brainiac song. You know?
Would just come back so fucking weird and mangled. Anytime you told him that something, if it was like, oh my God, that's amazing, this is gonna be a hit, it would just be like, oh, you think that? Okay. You know, you had to be very careful about how you liked a song. You'd have to kind of like hold it in and be like, oh my God, I like that song so much. He just was not interested in writing hits. Like, he wanted it to be something beyond, you know what I mean? It wasn't just like, oh yeah, that song sounds like Nirvana or whatever. It's like, this song would sound great on the radio. It was just like, nope. And so we make that demo. That's the demo that we must have sent right away to Mike.
We were getting like hundreds of demo tapes a year. It was one tape that stood out of hundreds, and it was guys I knew that I had grown up with.
Which was cool because he put out Smashing Pumpkins 7-inch before anyone knew who they even were. Yeah, he put out our very first 7-inch ever.
It was not just a song, it was the whole package. It was a band and a concept. I still can't put together how you listen to that much Bach and jazz and then put that into a distorted Moog. There's no explaining how Brainiac came out the other end of that.
He brought the tape home and he says, listen to this is the new band. And I said, okay. And he played it for me and I didn't react a whole lot. The last thing I wanted to do was hurt his feelings, but it didn't really get it then until I listened to it more.
So tell me about the first time that you went and saw the band. Like, what were your impressions?
Oh, boy.
I felt like I was in a time capsule, spin into the future, which was now. It was like, what is this?
And I remember being absolutely like so blown away, and that was it.
Like just watching like one of the best bands you'd ever seen. And it's like, that's weird, I know those guys.
I was just like, who is this guy up on stage?
I had never seen Timmy as a frontman, and really, talk about charisma. He exuded it.
You'd look around and the crowd was just, they had him. They had the crowd.
And it was 25 minutes long, and you didn't think, oh my God, why didn't they play longer? You thought, oh my God, we made it through the 25 minutes. I think that is what I came away with the most the first time, was thinking, holy shit, if they played one more minute, something would have gone wrong here. Like, I'm completely convinced that something was gonna break, something was gonna burn, someone was gonna bleed, something could explode, or all of those things. Like, it was Yeah, I've never seen anything like those 25 minutes. Ever.
What they sing about on Mars, we don't know yet, but soon we may. When we can ride in rocket cars to visit Mars someday. What they sing about on Mars.
I want to picture someone visiting our planet and listening in, and they hear Brainiac, and they go, what the fuck is going on in that planet?
I don't think I had set foot in Dayton until the mid-90s when my band Shellac played a show there with Brainiac.
My love of Dayton started because of Brainiac.
We didn't even think of them as a band from Dayton. We thought of them as like, who is this great band?
It's like Ohio bands are just weird fruit, you know?
About Devo and Chrissy Hine and just like understanding like, why is Ohio so cool?
There was some Martianism going on there.
Yeah, Dayton, what's going on over there? Of course some weird shit's gonna be coming out. I love that. I love seeing that that's the underbelly of America, you know? It's not just what's on the radio. There's this strange rumblings coming out of nothing, assembling something really interesting.
It's what's in the water. All that plus Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is supposedly where all the aliens are stored from UFO crash sites. So we all grew up absorbing all the radiation.
We could have moved to LA, we could have moved to New York, but I thought it's so much cooler to be from parts unknown. You know, I'd rather be the guy that like, the gunslinger who just shows up and you're like, where did that guy come from? Also, with hip hop, they be like rapping about where they're from.
Coming up in Compton, Bed-Stuy, do or die.
And I was like, this is it. Parts unknown.
Back then, if you said you're from Dayton, people were like, oh, Dayton, you know, like, how's that?
We loved this town, and we loved the creative flow that was in Dayton.
You know, there's so much that has come from here.
Industry and its output is representative of Dayton.
And great music. We're proud of being from here.
It was like our thing. It didn't belong to anybody else.
We're Brainiac, and we're different. We're different. You like that?
So that was like a huge deal to us. We were like, yeah, Dayton, fuck you.
I walked in after work and walked into the kitchen, and there were just T-shirts hanging everywhere. And Juan and Tim were busy hanging them up to dry. The first thought was, hey, great, they're making T-shirts. And then I started looking closer, and then I saw the back of it. And, you know, I saw the famous "Fuck Y'all War from Dayton."
You're gonna actually put that on a shirt, you know, and they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, okay.
It was brilliant. It was, you know, this hometown. They definitely were ambassadors.
I'm telling you, the mayor should have been paying us.
And at first I was just kind of mortified. I thought, oh no, you know, this is going to cause some trouble. But you know, it didn't take me long to warm up to it, and I actually thought it was kind of funny.
That's the brilliant mind of Juan Monasterio. Juan he was awesome. He did all of our artwork, all of our album covers.
Tim and Juan were both so focused. Tim was basically in charge of all the music, and Juan was just like such a smart business person.
Juan was not only willing to do the job and to make the phone calls, but he was really good at it.
So I really took on that part of like, well, we're not just gonna sit here and be the biggest band in Dayton.
So yeah, and then we just started touring. We just went for it.
My kind of dirt is a stickler for fashion. Better than a rubber's got superior action.
And we had bought like a $400 van, and we'd give ourselves $5 a day, and we slept on people's floors.
We did a lot of that. A lot of announcing at the end of the show. Hey, can we crash at somebody's house?
Yeah, I need a place to crash because this bar is paying us $50 tonight, and the next gig is $95 worth of gas money away.
I remember people looking at us like, what in the world is this? I thought it was a good sign, really, you know, because it was making people think and, like, experience something totally different.
When you just believe in it 100%, there was never a feeling like, oh, we're gonna play this music in front of people, and if they don't get it, that means this music sucks. It was even funnier if they didn't understand it, because then you're like, you know, who are you?
We played one show in Birmingham, Alabama to 0 people. And that was a really good show, too.
Still, you know, either playing to hardly anybody or playing to a packed house. You know, it was always different. It wasn't consistent. I remember we did get a show with Fugazi. It was in the middle of the week in Illinois, and it was the last minute. We had to drop everything to drive there, and that was a big crowd. That was over 1,000 people.
How quickly, in the span of a year, they went from literally begging me to put out their record to me begging them not to leave my label for a bigger label, because it was quick. I mean, it was genuine competition for who could put out the first Brainiac real record. And I lost, but I mean...
And then that's when I got the call from Camille.
Juan sent a tape with artwork on it. It was really a cool-looking tape. But I remember the first time we heard it, I was playing it so loud that people from upstairs were coming down to hear it. I've gotten good bands along the way, but not like that. Not like when my heart was coming out of my chest, just to, you know, that we were gonna sign them.
The next step was, you know, recording a record. One of our favorite bands that we just couldn't get enough of was Nation of Ulysses.
Every part of what they were doing, Tim and I were like, oh, this is what we want to do. Whatever they had, we wanted it too.
And so, you know, just looking at the credits on the back of the record, we saw that it was produced by this guy named Eli Janney. So we were like, we gotta get this guy to do our record.
I think that they were just calling a bunch of people whose work they liked. And I was like, sure, you know, do you have any demos or whatever? Send me some stuff. And so they sent me these crazy-ass demos, and I was like, this is great. And they want to work with me. That's even cooler.
We were totally shocked. He agreed to do it.
Because he was also in Girls Against Boys. I think that they were like, at that time, the most heavily courted band by the major labels.
To us, they were like, you know, oh, they're signed and they know all these people, so we could like barely look them in the eye. You must, I don't know, like, are you a millionaire?
In 1991, I had no job and no money. It was pretty miserable. Yeah. We lived in a warehouse that didn't have a kitchen. It just barely had a bathroom. It was just a huge empty warehouse space.
We had a lot of people staying there, and people would just like put sleeping bags on the ground, and you kind of wake up and be like, who the hell's here, you know?
One advantage of living in a giant warehouse is that you can stay with us, no problem. We have plenty of space. It was awesome. It was great, just like living the dream, but it was really bad. The neighborhood was so bad. Somebody sawed through our wall and robbed us, like with an electric saw. Like, what? How does that happen? That was good times, bro.
So he brought us up there to New York to record that record, to record Smack Money Baby.
I put on Smack Money Baby and it sounded so depraved and so maniacal and just so evil genius.
At that point, there weren't any bands that sounded like Brainiac. I mean, there wasn't. They weren't like the next generation of something else. They were completely unique.
The integration of the noise colliding with the melodic sense, clearly they were the whole package.
No indie record you could ever listen to at that level, at that time, compares. It just blew everybody away. It wasn't just me.
The picture that was painted sonically in my mind when I would hear them was so fantastic. I would try to emulate or find where he got a lot of those vocal effect ideas, you know, and You can't find them.
There was like an early vocal, if I don't know if it was a pedal or what.
They would tell me things like, oh, well, he's just making up noises with his mouth as well. So that adds to the legend.
Really, I never rolled him back because I was just like, it's genius, you know? It always seemed to enhance what he was kind of doing. I was like, yeah, let's try it. Let's just do it. Most of the recording with them was really just kind of like trying to get out of the way because their group mind worked very fast. And it was like, we want to make that really distorted and messed up, but not through a traditional amp. Like, what can we do? And so it's like, okay, here, how about this? I got this toy, let's try that. Let's just plug it into a mic pre that you're not supposed to do and turn it up all the way and just see what happens. And that's how a lot of that stuff was made, just doing stuff intentionally the wrong way to get a unique sound out of it. And that was definitely a hallmark of that band. It's like, it was cool.
After Smack Bunny Baby, we went from just self-booking these little one-offs or little mini jaunts down the East Coast to landing a West Coast tour, opening up for Girls Against Boys and the Jesus Lizard. It was crazy. It was like an overnight just kind of hurled into that world.
And they like our stuff, which just started to give us more and more confidence.
It was so angular and disjointed. They impressed me that way.
And I think it started to give Tim a lot more confidence.
I think a lot of stuff was born during those days, just getting in people's faces in the crowd and swallowing a microphone half down his throat and just, really freaking people out.
You were stuck in between these two bands that were furious on stage. I mean, crazy good. And we were just like, well, we can't hold anything back. Those kids got their money's worth, let me just tell you.
And when you go on a long tour like that, especially a tour with I think, very good music, you start to find yourself. You start to find your voice. You start to pull together all these loose elements and say, this is our identity as a group.
It just started to get to peek into this other world that we were gonna be a part of.
In the early 90s, there developed this kind of a fraternity of people in bands.
Music of the 90s was original, experimental, and Brainiac obviously are like on the top of like the most original, coolest, unique, sounds like only them.
I watched them play and was like, wow. And we stayed friendly. I mean, there were no cell phones at the time.
Brainiac stuff is really pioneering in that it's the type of music that explodes the framework. It kind of explodes the song. It's like, here's a song, and so we're not gonna have, in a way, a song. We're gonna have, some other bands that come to mind, like maybe even, I don't know if they even heard each other, but At the Drive-In or something.
Yeah, we like them. They're fucking weirdos, you know? I just really feel like they exemplified super weirdo, you know?
And maybe they were influenced by this, that, and the other thing. What, James Brown, 9 Inch Nails? I don't even know where their influences were, but they were like coming through in only their sound.
The record went really well. They were really happy with it. Grass was really happy with it. And then we were touring and we were just having this really fun time on tour, just really pushing each other to play better and better.
Going up there, recording that record, once we toured with the Jesus Lizard, it was like all the right people at the right time.
What's so cool about the 90s, obviously that I like talk about every day of my life today, is that music was so original and so exploratory. I have a 90s phone. What did I do? I can't believe it. Probably. Hello?
Righto, just say who you are and what you do. My name's Tim, and I play the synthesizer, and I fantasize about playing the bongo.
All right, so you're on Grass, and you're touring. What was it like doing full cross-country tours?
Second tour we did was with Jesus Lizard, so hell, you can't beat that, you know.
So, was there any real heavy stuff in the van with Michelle, or was it just like,
it was just
sort
like
of avoided
this building tension type thing where, a lot of it was our fault too, because obviously, whenever you get 4 people together, a lot of times they will just pick out the one person that they focus all their, anger on. And I guess, to an extent, that was kind of what happened with Michelle.
All right, so did she leave or? We kind of asked her to leave, I guess.
Well, Tim actually called me. He was the one that said that we should go our separate ways. So I wasn't expecting that. I was very shocked. I was not happy about it. I really did not want that to happen.
I remember, like, actually, you know, people in, like, Jesus Lizard and Girls Against Boys, they weren't so much pissed, but they really liked Michelle, and they were like, are you sure?
Yeah, I was nervous when that happened. I was a big Michelle fan.
Really what it came down to with that was we loved to tour. Michelle had a really pretty good job.
Touring was hard on me, you know, and my job at that point, they were starting to kind of give me a little bit of friction.
I was freaked out all the time because I'm like, we have to tour because, like, if we're not touring, then what am I? I'm just some guy working a minimum wage job in, you know, in Dayton, Ohio.
We just wanted to go nonstop, just be on the road as much as we could.
So you start off with that, you have that tension, and then after a while, when people are telling you they can't do this or that, then everything starts to bug you. So it kind of mixed over into some personal stuff, but it was pretty unfair to Michelle, really. Like, it wasn't, you know, we were just kids and dummies and, like, you know, and you're sitting there going like, I've got a record deal and this is gonna happen and that's gonna happen and you're getting in the way of this.
I was really confused for a while and kind of mad, you know. I let him know later, like about a month later, that I was really mad, you know. And it wasn't too long after that where we made up, and I'm really glad that we did. You know, I didn't want to hold a grudge. I just wanted to let him know, you know, I wasn't happy. You know, but it was good while it lasted.
I don't know. I don't feel particularly proud about it, but at the same time, I think it was necessary. So we got rid of Michelle, but I didn't really have an idea of like who we should get in there. I just remember Tim, he saw it more as an opportunity, like, well, okay, I can get somebody else in this band that can maybe do some different things that I want to do. And then Tim was the one who started pushing for John. And I remember being like, I don't know if I want that guy in there.
Why?
I mean, you know, because fucking John is fucking, you know, he's fucking John.
Like, what about him? I mean, specifically, what was...
Because, like, I think we went to his house and I just was like, oh, man, you know, he's just a weird guy.
Perfect. Got that down.
I remember, you know, hearing about Brainiac starting and then eventually seeing them. I was just like, man, these guys are so good, you know.
And I remember him telling me he was writing back and forth with John.
Tim sent me a letter, first of all. You know, he explained how they've been touring and all this stuff, and I'd obviously seen the band. And for me, I was just like flattered to be asked to be in a band that I was a fan of. But it was perfect timing for me because I was going to school in OU. Almost the entire time I was taking classes there, I had that thing that a lot of musicians get that's like, just like playing envy, you know? I'd see bands playing and I was just like, I want to be doing that. I'm not doing that right now. And I feel like it's actually time for me to either get out of school or something, you know, or to just be sad for a long time. And then I get this letter and it's like, yes, it was kind of like, this is exactly what you want to do. So I did think about it, but not very long.
Once John got it in there, it's like, oh, we always needed this. You know what I mean?
It happened pretty fast. I packed up my stuff, moved to Dayton. We started rehearsing for the tour that was coming up.
Yeah. So John was just kind of instantly plugged in and just, we didn't miss a beat, really.
I had a failure to control myself, laugh when the jokes are called as it's supposed to be.
Yeah, he changed everything. And I think once people saw how great he was, a lot of people were like, this is kind of awesome.
I had chills. I remember the hair on my arm was standing up.
They stepped it into another gear. I mean, their trajectory was already unstoppable, but John was just, you took something that was already at 10 and you put it up to 10.5.
Timmy with, you know, John and Tyler and Juan, and they had the chemistry and very daring and experimental.
And you could tell there was something different about what these guys were doing, and just in the people that saw them and how they reacted to seeing them. I was pretty mesmerized because they were so different at the time.
They blew my mind when we saw them. Still a lot of energy, you know? Just an awful lot of fucking energy.
For me, it's exactly what I wanted to do, and I think I was the right person for the job. So, yeah, it felt good immediately. I think the thing that was, I was still green in the sense I hadn't been on tour. So we were playing with this band. The drummer comes into the dressing room. He couldn't say anything, basically. He just showed us that he had acid. And Tim, he looked at me, and he's like, sure, and he took it. And so I also took it.
I thought they took the acid after the show. That's what they told me, because I'm sure I would have been mad. Because we had a rule that you weren't allowed to get wasted, that everyone probably broke that rule eventually.
And I just remember it really started kicking in, and that song, You Dropped a Bomb on Me, was playing. It was just like, you dropped a bomb on me. And I'm sitting there, I'm staring kind of like out into space. That's a terrible drug to take to play Brainiac. I mean, it certainly learned music. I just remember feeling like there was an elastic quality to doing what I was doing that just felt kind of strange. But drugs never affected our performance.
And an album as well? You contract for an album?
Yeah, we're going to be recording an album in about a month.
Do you know where and who's at the controls and all that?
I think we're going to try to use Eli again.
You get along with Eli well on a musical level then?
Oh, yeah, totally. We all get along really well. Like a lot of the same music. Same, like, ethic, I guess. Just wanting to pervert the sound somewhat, so.
We did that tour, and then Grass was like, guys, make a new record, for crying out loud.
When it came time to make their next record, we were still so close that it was an easy matchup.
Eli was great to work with. He was up for trying anything. Whenever he would ask Tim what he, you know, like, what do you think this needs? And Tim was just like, always like, let's run it through some more distortion.
He was relentlessly creative, you know, and for me, having an artist who just will push everything aside, including eating, and just do that is pretty cool. May not have been the easiest person to be in a band with, but.
That, I think, is almost where, like, Tim and I, in a lot of ways, we sort of started to go on a slightly different musical path, like where I started to fall behind and didn't quite understand what he was doing.
With John and Tim in the band, you can have one visionary person, but having two of these nutcases.
In my mind, I wanted the next record to sound even more polished than the first record. I was like, the first record isn't polished enough. We need to get more polished. But that wasn't the case.
It was just more experimental, and, you know, things that were like fucking with the altimeter.
I remember he was telling us about that parakeet record that he was using.
Yeah. The complete parakeet trainer. Yeah, this, I think he got this before I joined the band, I think in like Detroit.
He had that record for a long ass time before. It was just sitting there waiting for its moment, you know, waiting to happen.
Give me some love.
It was kind of like playing around with the variants of the record.
That song does to me what I think rock music should do. It sucks the air out of the room, and it makes them feel like something's communicating to them from some other dimension.
God save us song.
Give me some love. Give me some
So we did that record, And by the time it was done, it was even weirder than like, because all these sort of things were happening.
I remember that thought too, where it's just like, what have we done? Seemed like a good idea.
I was fucking scared. Like, I was like...
We really enjoyed making it, but we were just kind of like, is this going to be a total failure in other people's eyes?
If you think about the stuff that was coming out around that time, the more mainstream stuff that was selling big, it's now, you know, it's nowhere near that weird.
And I remember taking it home, putting it in a boombox, and laying on the floor in my parents' living room and being like, this is terrible. What is, like, this record is the worst record.
We were just kind of looking at each other like, is anyone gonna want to listen to this? Just because it was, you know, there was some weird things. There was a poppiness to Brainiac anyway, you know, the first album. Oh, that was you? Oh.
Yeah, that's okay.
They found this weird sound they wanted to make, and they made it. It was theirs. No one else was doing what they were doing.
And the whole world was all about grunge. Yet that came out. That's incredible.
They had a really good sensibility about modernizing pop music in a way that appealed to me. It just had an edge to it that I thought was not common. I don't know what they sounded like. I'm not sure exactly.
So I remember being kind of freaked out and not really sure about it.
What do you mean?
But, you know, then you get good reviews, and then you're like, oh yeah, I always knew it was great.
I remember Eli was like really blown away. He was like, this is awesome.
I just thought it was a really cool record and something that I've never done before. But cool doesn't always mean sellable. You know what I mean? That's the thing. And it's like, I just didn't know the Grass people that well to know whether they were going to freak out or not.
People at Grass just, they loved it.
Have you met Camille yet?
Oh, yeah. It was amazing. That's all I could say. He was genius.
She was like, it's genius. You guys are geniuses.
Everything you heard from him was just, because it was, like I said, it was so different than everything else.
Oh my gosh, I love the record. You guys are geniuses.
They always delivered better and better. The kid was a genius.
You know, that was the thing about Tim. What that music was really was a lot about his artistic journey. You know, I mean, we were all along for the ride, but it was definitely his thing.
He was like, I was watching him unfold of the guy who was going to arrive and be this really remarkable, unique artist that was unlike anybody else. And that's what I kind of watched Timmy more from the far because he was so...
Tim he was a man of few words at times. I wouldn't say brooding. Some other people would, but... Okay, he was brooding.
I don't know if I was intimidated by Timmy. I felt like I never really got to know him as well as I knew Juan or Tyler.
Why, you felt intimidated?
Maybe sort of, kind of. He was really good at what he did, and I probably had issues with that.
And then the more attention he was getting, I think the harder time he was having.
I think it was after a show, and we ended up staying. It was one of the few nights, maybe a label paid for this hotel, and it was like near Times Square or something like that. And it was like an old-timey hotel, and we were like on the 30th floor, and it had one of those ledges like in the movies. And Tim just got out on the ledge and just walked around the building. Like, so you couldn't see him anymore. Like, and I'm like fucking terrified of heights. I'm just like laying on the floor like going, what the fuck is he doing? It's just like windy, just walked away for like 5 minutes.
It seemed to me that there was some part of his personality that he wasn't quite comfortable with, and he always kept hidden away. He would bear himself more live, I think, because it was a fleeting thing.
He was getting stiff stuff out of his system, you know, when he was performing, and it had to be cathartic and cleansing. It was cathartic and cleansing to watch it.
It's like this hyperkinetic James Brown guy or somebody.
I always thought about James Brown.
In the school of like James Brown.
Draw some of that James Brown and include it in punk rock, really.
A front person who understood how to work the room.
Never seen anybody play keyboards get as into it.
Just having a bird's eye view from behind the drum set of just his genius insanity on stage, it was just infectious.
And a little bit scary. You know, you didn't know what was going to happen.
The song stops and he's like, I'm the fucking king of pop.
The king of pop. Brainiac, the king of pop.
I'm the king of pop. Somebody give me a kiss. And I'm like,
And you're like, who are you?
Tim could look like a pretty aggressive guy on stage. You weren't sure, but then in the next moment, he'd be totally goofing off about something.
I don't know. It was just definitely like something took over.
You know, the thing was, it wasn't just, you know, musically, yeah, also with things like, you know, with style.
That was at the phase where they were like wearing all that stuff. I'm remembering the color orange. I'm remembering sunglasses.
Like they were shopping on just a slightly different rack at the thrift store, you know?
Always fashion before function.
Yeah, they did wear weird clothes. I mean, we probably just thought all Americans dressed like that.
You know, there's the thrift store chic with the tight T-shirts and the belt buckles, and then there's the time with the earmuffs.
fucking earmuffs. Just the way they wore it.
At some thrift store, those Brainiac had all bought roller skates. And then just roller skating around the blocks around the venue, which is like in the middle of nowhere.
You will believe that there was some flack to be caught from that.
Of course, Detroit, Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, fine. You get to like North Dakota, you gotta stop for gas at some point, man.
When we got out at a gas station in middle of America, wherever it was, you know, it was weird.
We walk in there and people would just be like, ah!
If a band is like a gang, you have to have your gang colors, you know?
I think that's kind of where the magic happens in bands. When you're around each other all the time, you're like, and going different places all the time together, and so you're just sort of like, you know, the tour jokes and all these things develop.
Chihuahua, do you want to kiss Chihuahua?
Oh,
no. Come on, guys, be a little serious.
You're coming to the darkness with me, cameraman. I look back on that, we're just so poorly behaved, you know?
That's because we're in
the number system. Oh, yeah.
Never a dull moment.
No.
Yeah, like, again, they're so compelling as a group. That's what I think made them stand out and why labels and people like myself were so gung-ho to get them.
Everybody loved them, you know, but they had to finish their deal with Grass, and then Corey just grabbed them as soon as he could.
I always thought they were great, super high energy, and they were like one of those bands where who they were was always shining through, and who they were was always moving forward. They were just progressing as a band, and it just sounded different than anything else at the time.
Touch and Go had a bigger arm of distribution. They could pack shows. If you just say it's a Touch and Go artist, the place was packed. I was sad because I love them, but yeah. I mean, I might have even whispered to them, go to Touch and Go.
By the time Hissing Prigs came out on Touch and Go, it was like they had hit a stride that was like, it's all its own.
You know, one thing I think that we never really looked back too much. I just remember it was just kind of this straight line where we just kept moving forward and doing different things. And yeah, it's funny, I always thought, oh, this is how all bands are gonna be. No. Yeah. Yeah, they were definitely unique.
They also, like, the way that they developed the numbers, the names of the songs and stuff was so ahead of their time.
That's what made, I think, another thing that makes it so timeless. It just gets crazier and crazier, but at the same time, somehow more and more familiar.
It's an interesting challenge to be able to make a record that is cohesive and eclectic at the same time. You know, you can listen to different songs and kind of feel like, oh, this is like a different world than the last one I heard.
We did talk about his lyrical process a little bit. The words were just so weird, and they kind of flowed together, but they didn't necessarily make a lot of sense.
Even till this day, I don't think this is what he's saying, but I'm always going, mythical dedos.
Give me five. I don't know what he's talking about.
And Chihuahua, Chihuahua, like I can't.
Hot metal Dobermans covered with cinnamon fins, I think is one of my favorites.
That's a pretty good line.
I was like, what? What is that? Goes. It sounded cool.
And I said to him, I said, it sounds like you're saying, can I get a witness? And he said, well, if that's what you think it is. Yeah, he wouldn't own up to what the lyrics were. We had to make them up.
I'm a cracked machine. I am a guy wild hussy. I am your favorite DJ. A blip on the screen. I am a cracked machine.
Because the vocals were so distorted, it became more of like a relationship of vowel sounds and things like that. And if you got to go and actually read the stuff, you're like, don't be so shy, man. Like, this is really like, this is good.
Not like there's some political message, just clever.
Seems only fitting that on the 4th of July, the town of George Washington is the launch site for Lollapalooza 95.
It's like, how did we end up on Lollapalooza?
The year we played, Hole, Jesus Lizard, Beck, Sonic Youth. I mean, you know, there really wasn't anything else in America like Lollapalooza.
They were starting to get bigger. It was very rapid, but at the same time, it was a deserved ascent, yeah, because they were just, you know, just super original.
There are those bands that other bands just look at and think they're cool. I do recall a lot of bands loving Brainiac, you know?
Yeah, I remember Beck watching them at Lollapalooza. And it was like when Loser was really big, and Beck would disguise himself, like put all his hair up under a hat and wear cop sunglasses and try and watch Brainiac. And like 2 or 3 songs in, like girls would spot him, and yeah, he'd have to leave.
That's the thing, is if you saw them live, you were just like, man, these guys are fucking amazing. And they still have so much room to grow.
Hissing Prigs and during Lollapalooza too was the beginning of major labels and how many more records are we going to make on Touch and Go, and what major label are we going to sign to, and are we going to sign to a major label, and how much money are we going to get, and like who owns what, and all these things that like you never have to think of, you know what I mean, when you're starting out, and then you start to think about that stuff, and you know, people are, yeah, it was very stressful.
You guys are going places. Especially, I love the CD. Tons of great cuts on there.
Thanks.
You know?
Okay, so let's time travel a little bit.
Okay.
Brainiac appeared at that transitional moment when the scene was going from being sort of purely underground, the transition into where there was a professional class that had attached to the music scene.
When Nirvana broke and became huge at the beginning of the 90s, it started a feeding frenzy. Every major label A&R person, their directive was, there's this whole indie scene out there. There's got to be another Nirvana out there. You know, if you value your job, you'll go find them.
I mean, to me, really, the 90s just felt like a gold rush. I mean, it felt like a gold rush, plain and simple.
I've only been to Dayton for one reason, and that was for Brainiac.
They were just, I mean, just throwing money hand over fist.
$1 million, $2 million, and just tons of hand wringing.
Man, there was so much money being thrown around there. You know how, it was insane. It was insane how many bands got so much money that no one even knows who they are.
Some bands were harder to get to know, and they kept you at distance. Those guys were definitely one of them. They were holding that pole with a little feather on it, and you were the cat, you know?
Brainiac was really good at hanging out with all the label people to get hotel rooms.
I remember one time he was staying at a really nice place, and the message on the postcard said, "This sure beats waking up in someone's kitchen floor with a dog licking your face." And I thought, yeah, I bet it does.
I could tell you stories about being at dinners and choking on, like, literally coughing at them passing on deals.
They just saw a lot of bands at the time get signed and then go nowhere and get burned. And they were smart enough to realize they should be careful about that.
How amazing is that? Like, they didn't want to be somebody's $1 million flavor of the month.
Like now, you know, musicians are trying to survive, and if they can get a deal, they're going to take it, you know what I mean? Or do a commercial or whatever it is they need to make money. But at that time, it was a huge deal to go from an independent label to a major label. Even we had a huge backlash, like, you know, sellouts, basically.
Brainiac is too popular. You could spend 10 years building up your audience, and it could just be wiped away, like with just one bad deal. That fear that you weren't going somewhere and that you ultimately were making a terrible mistake that would end your career was very palpable to me. You're worried also about, well, if we go to a major label, are you going to be allowed to do what you want to do? Artistic freedom is a big deal.
So many bands, they'll sign a contract, take a big advance, and then not be able to produce. He wanted to make sure that when they did sign a contract that he could back it up.
If you take away this lifestyle, if you take away this and you start giving us money and you start letting us stay in hotels and we drive around in a nice van and we do all this other stuff, is the art gonna go away? Is what makes us good gonna go away? All these things are sort of percolating around you.
You
guys are brothers, you're like the best, perfect band. I was like, please do not break.
Nothing ever went wrong for us for a long fucking time.
I think touring also, some of the cracks that started showing a little bit.
I don't know if mad at each other is the word, but everyone was just kind of like living and operating in their own crazy sort of mini universe. That's what caused me a lot of anxiety, was like, what are we doing?
You're in a situation where you're relying on 3 other people to keep it together and to keep going.
My girlfriend at the time got pregnant. The due date was basically in the middle of the Hissing Prigs campaign. To make it more stressful, the baby came 2.5 weeks early. I kind of had to convince the guys that we needed to drive back. And I missed the birth, and I was not well liked by anyone during that time period, including myself. So it was stressful.
Every single person in the band, one way or another, has power over you. You know, I would say Tim probably had it the most together, but he also had the most pressure on him.
He blew up at me. We were in a hotel room, and I dropped the bomb, and he's like, "You're ruining my career!" Like, he literally, like, outbursted at me, and I was like, fuck. Well, what could I say?
It's like everybody holding everything in, and then so when everything would come out, it just always comes out like, ah.
That's the thing about being in a band. You really can't, You're flying by the seat of your pants.
Played that show at Lounge Acts. I like took just a thing of beer and went whoosh, and threw it into the crowd. And then somebody threw a beer bottle and it smashed right in Tim's face. And we just kept playing, and it was the end of the show. And then I got off and I was like, oh my God, that was a great show. And he just grabbed me and threw me up against the wall. He's like, don't ever fucking do that again. And I was just like, okay. It's not your best self. You're not your best person at the time. And I think we all kind of became not the best versions of ourselves.
It was kind of like tension building.
People getting pretty fucking pissed at each other, people yelling at each other. John got punched.
Eventually, we got into a fisticuffs on tour. He was super pissed at me, and he took a swing at me.
I mean, you're putting like 20-year-olds into like a situation where like, here you're gonna sign this $2 million deal. Maybe, if everybody can just keep it together. I started having panic attacks because I was so freaked out by all the stuff that was kind of going on. Like people weren't getting along that well, and no one ever told me what a panic attack was. So I literally thought I was going crazy, and I was trying to hide it from other people. Because like I'd have these just like debilitating panic attacks where I was just like freaking out. Like I definitely felt like I was losing my mind, and I felt like everybody was sort of acting out in their own ways, like a lot of extra partying going on.
Yeah, there's tons of stories. One of the craziest things was Marilyn Manson came through Dayton, and Marilyn Manson ends up having an after party after the show at Tim's house.
But that party is sort of famous, and like the stories from that party, like the weird shit that happened at that party. I'll tell you off camera, but like, I'm not gonna tell you here.
And so what do you guys do with Manson?
You know, you just talk about just, you know, daily life stuff. I don't know. I just remember thinking it was funny, and I don't think Tim was too happy about the whole thing.
Just felt like things were like spinning a little bit out of control, while at the same time still keeping our momentum.
So I'm your host, Matt Pinfield. Up next, it's the latest from the Dayton, Ohio band Brainiac. This is the first clip off their third album, Hissing Prigs and Static Culture. It's called Vincent, Come On Down. And here it is on 120 Minutes.
Then it was like, whoa, and Spin's doing this, and you know, they're on MTV now.
It was wild. Brainiac mania.
They just say that about so many bands, like there's no one else like them, but they really do stand out.
They were so special, and like no one could deny it when they saw it, whether it was MTV or like a major label.
And somebody else called us up and was like, Beck came and watched us in Lollapalooza. Then Beck asked us to go on tour.
It all seemed in line. Going on tour with Beck just seemed to be like a part of that momentum.
And that tour was fucking awesome, yeah. I mean, I think they're the biggest shows we ever played in terms of like audience size and great after parties. Just felt like you were winning, you know? Like just things were happening.
And just the energy there was so incredible. If you could somehow bottle that, you could power an entire city. The shows were just incredible.
On the Beck tour, just in the middle of a fucking song, looking out, playing bass, just totally getting into it, and I just like, sometimes you just snap out of it, and I just like snapped out of it, and I'm like, what if this is the last time I do this? Like, I remember thinking that, like, what if this just stops today? And I've always kind of thought about that, because I remember it was jarring, like, just, you know, I would jump around a lot, and just this moment of, like, it just, like, came into my head, like, yeah, it's a very, yeah.
Do we go now?
Anytime you're ready, yes.
Hi, I'm Tyler,
And this is Tim. We're from Brainiac, and you're watching The New Frontier. Good enough?
Yeah, my name's Tony Youngblood. I already mentioned. All right. Thanks, Ben. I'm here in the backstage of the side door, actually above the side door in the very dim room with two of the members of Brainiac. You've got a new EP out, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And I really like it, Electroshock for President.
That's true. That's true. I'd like to introduce you to our bass player, Monasterio.
Hi. Buenas noches. I'm in a band. You're probably one of our biggest influences, as a matter of fact.
I like it, all
Every song
right.
is good. I don't know. I think in 20 years, people are still going to be listening to it. That's the thing.
so.
You know, you get
That's good, because we'll still be getting the checks then.
that way. But with that, every time
we
I
just
listen
need more
to it,
people like you to rip us off, and that'll sort of give us more
Yeah.
credibility.
Yeah.
Keep the myth alive. So please, tell your friends, rip Brainiac
rip
off.
Brainiac off from Brainiac from the horse's mouth.
You're
Not
doing
to
us
say
a
that
big
they're
favor.
horses or that they have mouths, but you know.
But we are both.
Yeah, true. Back to you, Ben.
We did the Beck tour, and then we were gathering pretty regularly.
We were working on new songs, trying to figure out what the next record was going to look like, and also just kind of in, heavy discussion about the future, what label we would be on, and yeah, so there's a lot going on there.
We had a meeting and Tim was like, we've toured, we've made these records. He's like, if you guys want to keep doing this, then we have to keep pushing this thing forward, because otherwise this is like, then we can just be done. I think he was drunk one time, but he was like, he got really wasted and he's like, he kept talking about the phoenix. He's like, we gotta rise again like the phoenix. Like he just kept saying that over and over again, and that's what he was talking about. Like we sort of had to destroy what we'd done before.
It was also a turning point because I think our relationship, our creative partnership was basically coming to an end. That they had kind of outgrown me as a producer. And so I was excited to see what was going to happen next.
We had made like 3 records with Eli. We were deciding to just branch out.
We were using triggered drums, samplers, drum machines, while at the same time sort of mixing it in with the lo-fi aesthetic.
Go on and give me some fresh new eyes. Dress my tongue in a new disguise. Go on and give me a sexy mouth to taste it.
He was trying to push that stuff in as much as he could while still keeping a little bit, I guess, of what we had.
To taste it.
That was us kind of trying to take it to the next level. We started using samplers and just other experiments. I got into circuit bending at the time.
What's that song sound like? What's how that
With a kind of a French guy. That one.
Bands have a tendency to just repeat themselves.
Once that band develops an identity and they start getting rewarded, there is a strong incentive to stop experimenting and keep doing the thing that people like.
So when you hear groups make radical changes like this, I think of a band like Radiohead or something, then you realize something's at work that's like, there's a lot of possibility there. Whether it's based on the friendships of the people in the group or somehow in that dynamic, that change is possible. I don't think it's possible in every group.
Some of those things were like kind of 4-track experiments, some bits at home, and then we brought the reels in to Jim O'Rourke's studio.
I mean, the first thing that occurred to me was that they were integrating these things in a much more interesting way than other bands.
Working with Jim was great. I liked a lot of his records that he had made, and he's an improviser as well.
Usually mixing people's records, they would come to me with something they didn't know what to do with anymore. I sort of became the go-to guy for when you've hit a wall.
We brought this like, murky sounding recording with a wet blanket like draped over it and was like, can you make this into a Brainiac record?
I know how it feels when I need a disaster to know what I cannot have.
Electroshock for President record. I thought that was one of the best records I'd heard.
Electroshock for President, they're fucking amazing.
It's pretty ahead of its time, too.
The EP they did with Jim was tremendous.
Kind of made me realize at the time, I thought, wow, this band's really capable of something, I think, extraordinary.
Thank you, that was a new number. This is one of the hits. You'll be hearing a lot of this song in the future.
I think I'd had like a talk with Tim about like what the future was gonna be like. It just didn't feel that resistance anymore. I think he just had become okay with like, we're gonna do this major label thing.
You know, when you're that in demand, you can set the rules and set the guidelines. If I choose your label, you have to let me do things this way. And they became that in demand.
It just kind of seemed like the next logical step in the evolution of Brainiac to just go to that next level with a major label.
A cloud had been lifted. I think things had been kind of worked out. We'd sort of decided who we were gonna sign with. Some of the other acting out that was going on in the band, like, that had also been addressed finally. And I just think we were just in a really good spot.
We were supposed to fly to New York the following week to talk to like Interscope and maybe another label.
Meet with a lawyer, talk about contracts, options, all that kind of stuff.
You know, working through this new thing for whatever the next LP would be.
Just kept getting better and better and better. Rick Rubin's called, and he wants to produce your record. I was like, oh, that's cool. Then I get another call, and they're like, Rage Against the Machine called. They want you to go on tour with them. And we're like, that's pretty fucking cool. We were at the final word on the final page of the chapter, and it felt like, okay, now we're gonna here's the next chapter.
Having your band from the beginning, having your like boys from home that you get onto the world stage.
You know, but, you know, like you said, things happen the way they do.
They weren't trying to be current. They were trying to be timeless. They were making art. They were making something that was going to withstand the test of time. They knew it was craft. It wasn't like, oh, we have to have something so we can go on tour. We have to have something so that we can get reviews. No, like they were making great records to make great records. And then they played live shows because they like to play great live shows, and those things go together. Yeah, wow. Still fit.
Well, look, let me,
It was on the news while I was eating dinner, and for some reason I didn't look at the TV.
Don't call it payback.
And I remember hearing when they were interviewing the policeman, he was saying that was one of the worst crashes he'd ever seen.
Features fold the blankets of
And then my cousin called me, and she told me that was him, and I couldn't believe it.
I get a call, and it's my sister, and she's just freaking out. They've been trying to get a hold of me, and they didn't know where I was. They thought I was like in the car, maybe. And then they sort of told me, and I was just like...
I don't think I had any reaction at all. I was completely in shock. Drove down Main Street and made it about a quarter of a mile. And I just pulled into the gas station that was there, and I just lost it.
I just went into Tim's room and was just like looking at his stuff, and I just remember being numb.
It was just unbelievable. Yeah, couldn't believe it.
I just thought it was horrible. I mean, you feel sorry for the people that are around him. More than anything.
I think a lot of people just, myself included, just compartmentalize it, you know? Because trying to make sense out of something like that, there is no rhyme or reason to it. What happened that night, like, I wasn't there. I know what different people have said, and like, it was just like, it didn't make any sense.
No, it was a car accident, but beyond that, I don't know what the circumstances were.
I heard it was icy. I still don't know. From what I understood is that Tim had this 72 Mercedes. He loved this car. It was green and just loved driving around town.
I remember Tim had just bought that Mercedes-Benz, and he opened the trunk for us. It was like totally rusted out in the back. So the exhaust was just coming into the vehicle, and he basically said like, yeah, it's got some issues. And 5 days later, that's when it happened. And basically it was just the carbon monoxide was building up in his system like during those days.
He just slowly reached the threshold of that carbon monoxide poisoning, and he just happened to be driving home at the time, lost control of the car, and hit this pole. So that's how I understand what happened.
Yeah, the part of tragedy is just what would have been next, really. Because I don't think that unit was done speaking, really,
To me, Tim was Brainiac, so the minute I got that call, I was just like, okay, this is just done.
We just really enjoyed what we were doing as Brainiac, and that was gone. It was tough living without that, because it was who we were for the past 5 solid straight years. That's all we knew, it's all we did, was just, make music and travel and tour and see the world and meet amazing people, and it was just gone.
I just didn't really talk to people from before. Like, I just cut myself off from that world almost completely, and just like this wall came down, and then I was just like, I didn't really have the tools to deal with it.
I just didn't want to do anything, didn't want to leave the house, just utter total depression.
The practical side of me just like, I guess I got to go get a job, got to figure out what my job is going to be.
When the dust had settled, I went around the neighborhood to try and find work, and there was a place called Park Chili. I remember going there, manager was looking over, and he's like, so what brings you to Park Chili? And I didn't cry, but it was just almost like a breaking point for me, because I was not going to tell this guy, like, what had just happened to me. But I was just kind of like, well, I just love chili, sir, And as soon as I left there, I was just like, this is nuts. I got to figure something out.
Tim's passing was clearly an explosion that just rocked everything and sent everyone careening in different directions.
When someone is gone, it's the job of the survivors to pick up the pieces and figure out what works from there, or not.
Brainiac was done in 1997, and my personal life just kind of spiraled out of control. Just drug addiction, and very rapidly put on a bunch of weight. I was a wreck. I was a mess.
It's kind of a fog what happened to me. My strategy was just to cut myself off. You just move somewhere else and start again and just do something else and don't really talk to your old friends.
I was like, I was depressed, I was trying to make music. Some people say you can't run away from your problems, but sometimes a fresh start is an entirely different matter, Loaded up all my worldly possessions and drove to New York. Some of the details are fuzzy, you know.
It wasn't until Kim Deal asked me to play on a Breeders record that I kind of popped at it a little bit and got together and started playing drums again, and went up to New York for a couple months. And we were up there for a while, a lot longer than expected. I was getting pretty burned out, so I just left to go get a slice of pizza and got on the airplane and went home to Dayton. And when I came back home from that, it was just kind of back to the same depression and just doing nothing, really.
There's just not a solution to that. Yeah, there's not a, like, I don't know. Maybe people just do what they can do, like they deal with it the way that they can deal with it.
I think it was therapeutic for him to continue making music. Everyone was stunned, and his way out was to keep making music.
You know, I was always still tinkering a little bit on my own, just recording on 4-track and stuff like that. And just really being in a new environment, and that's how Enan started.
I don't know how long it took for John to put it back together and start something new, Enon, you know, which then became like a really influential, brilliant band.
John kind of spiritually just kept going. Took what he was doing in Brainiac and just kept going and augmented it, and still to this day is doing interesting music.
Where I am today is, you know, it's all progression that makes sense to me now. Part of my momentum and moving forward, it's not like painful for me to look back. It's just like kind of draining. It's like I was like a lifetime ago, it feels like.
Schmersel, I definitely kept in touch with, and in terms of his kind of commitment to music. Juan, I again think about as like a business person who just went and was like, well, you know, I'll move, I'll get job and things related to what I believe in.
I'm a motion graphics designer, work a regular job. People don't really know what you did. Maybe you're not who you were before, but you're definitely, you can be somebody else.
You can be somebody else, but you haven't.
Yeah, you don't process.
Yeah. So I guess my question is, how long did it take for you to?
I don't. Well, that's what I'm saying. If that's my strategy, did I process it? I don't think I really did. Like, I don't know. You know, I think if you poke me hard enough, it probably would all come out pretty easily. But like, I feel like, you know, I put in 20 years to not really trying to deal with it too much. So, and then time definitely helps. You put it far enough behind you, it's like it gets easier.
John's doing Enan, and Juan's gone in different directions, you know, and clearly Tyler had gone in a whole different direction too.
Around 2007, I found myself just like in pretty much the darkest, lowest possible place I could be. Just drug addiction and just all this crazy stuff. I stayed in that darkness for about a decade. So it was like a 10-year journey of just spiraling out of control. And so I went back to my church that I grew up in as a child. I came back to my church just full of doubts and just read a whole bunch of books and started reading the Bible again and kind of getting a fresh start. And I started serving in my church, and I started playing drums in the band. And then I came on part-time, and now I'm there full-time as an assistant pastor, and I just love what I do. I'm grateful to be breathing, much less to be able to do what I do, and so I'm very grateful.
Okay, stand by and mark it.
Perfect. Close the sync.
What's been cool is over the past few years, we've definitely been reconnected, which has been wonderful, and I don't want that to ever end. I think for the most part, we processed it individually, don't you think?
Yeah. I think it was really weird, but I mean, like, you're talking about some...
A cataclysmic change in everyone's
and
life.
Also, we just were like...
Planets realigned.
When something like that happens, you just kind of, at least for myself, it's just easier just to go off by yourself and not be reminded of, like, everything you've lost.
It was so bizarre. It was like a twofold grieving process, because first and foremost, you lost your best friend.
Right.
And someone that you were close to and you loved. But then once that whole grieving process kind of started to die down, then it really sunk in like, oh, my career's over. You know, this dream of Brainiac.
The shift of all of that stuff happening and then all of that stuff not happening. We just happen to have something really incredibly tragic happen,
Right.
and that forced a great change in all of our lives, you know.
Yeah, well, when we got back from tour, I mean, we probably wouldn't talk for a while. Like, get me away from these people. I've lived in a 85 Chevy van with for 45 days straight.
And I remember Tim's dad was, of course, very distraught. But he said something that was nice at the service. He said that, you know, he was so happy with his life at that point, you know. And in a way, I think this was a plea also to the guys, the bandmates and stuff, to say, try to remember that.
I feel just so fortunate that I had been there to witness the power and the magic, and for unknown reason, this changing moment. But I feel like I witnessed, you know, some sort of almost biblical, mythical thing.
And I think Timmy could have led a paradigm shift in musical taste. I really do believe that. I think that band was so cool and so unusual that what we lost not just was his life, and, you know, clearly his friends and family lost that, but I thought that we could have lost something that was more impactful to just the art.
Hearing Tim's vocals, it's just crazy. Just weird to go back to those tracks and just suddenly turn it on and be like, oh, there he is. He's not gone, he's right there, like fully alive, singing at you.
Yeah, that's haunting.
Yeah, it's crazy. But it's also awesome.
When I was going through some posters, getting ready to have some stuff scanned to send to you, actually, there was a music box that I hadn't played in years. It was a little man at a piano, and he was sitting clear across the room. And I found this one poster, and I thought, oh yeah, I'd forgotten about this one. And I was rolling it open, and I heard just like 2 or 3 notes from the music box, and I thought, that did not just happen. I mean, I know it sounds probably crazy to a lot of people, but it just, to me, it was a sign, like, yeah, hey, go through this stuff. This is good for you, Mom. Because it was, you know, like I said, it was hard for me for a long time to look at the posters or watch videos or listen to the music, and it just, I don't know, it just, I've heard from many people that think he's out there giving them little messages now and then.
This dream that I had shortly after he passed away, we hugged and he said, I'm sorry, I didn't know. And I said, I know you didn't know. And he says, but I can't stay, I gotta go. And I said, I know. And we hugged, and that was it. That was it.
I had this recurring dream every single night. I was in this unrecognizable bar, and every single night I'd walk in and I'd see Tim, and I instantly would get ecstatic to see him and then mad, because I thought he was faking the whole thing or something, and just like took off and didn't want to do Brainiac anymore. You know how dreams are. And then I'd always run to him, and the joy would overtake that. And every single night I would hug him, and as I would hug him, he would just slither out of my arms and disappear. And that was the end of the dream. I had that exact same dream, what felt like forever. And I don't know why, I don't know what it meant, but eventually the dream just stopped. And I don't know if you'd call that closure or not, but yeah, I don't know what you'd call that.
I came home from work, and I was just kind of mad at somebody, and I was kind of complaining to him about it. And he said, Mom, I think you might be overreacting. And he just looked a little annoyed with me, and it hurt my feelings. And he knew it hurt my feelings. And so he felt bad about it. And the next day I came home from work, and on the table in the entrance was a little cactus with a note. It doesn't want me telling this story.
I hope people realize that, yeah, this is a tragic story, but it's not a story about tragedy.
to the show like that day, it just seemed kind of almost overwhelming. Then when we started playing, it was just, it was such a good time, and it was great.
We made it about having guests, involving other people that were like related to the band.
Even though I was lucky enough to work on this stuff, I was a genuine fan of it too. So it's like, it's just part of my musical history.
I can't imagine my life if Brainiac hadn't been in it.
It felt like this is the time to do this. Feel what you avoided before, kind of now or never.
The show was spectacular, and the energy, it was electric.
It was just amazing to me to watch the reaction to the music and just see all that energy, and there was just this overwhelming feeling of love in that room.
That energy lives on through you and all these other people. From where I'm at, it's about celebrating that memory.
I've always been very allergic to bands getting back together. I don't want to be up there and like not do it justice. So I feel like that gig turned out really great. It just felt natural. Doing these shows was more like therapy for me personally, just being able to see all those people I hadn't seen in years and realize like how much, instead of internalizing this, like that the music meant a lot to them and to see them again and to have that experience.
Just seeing that whole family of people and, feeling that feeling of being sort of part of the music world is like, it's a great feeling.
I think a lot of it was cathartic, and I think what happened too, I wasn't prepared for how emotional it was gonna be. Like, I was kind of a wreck after the show, like in a good way,
And seeing people that you haven't seen in a long time, and it all kind of centers back to my brother. It was kind of heartbreaking, but on the other hand, it was like, wow, here we are, and this music is living on, and people are playing it, and there's so much love here, and wow, look at what he left behind.
Tim he died so suddenly, and it just changed my life forever. And I thought, it just felt like everything was over, the music, everything was the end. But I've come to realize lately that, a huge part of Tim is still here. His music and the memories and all the love that people feel, that's everywhere, that's still here. And so his story really didn't end 20 years ago. It's still being written.
The School of Rock stuff that's been going on in Texas. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy.
It's so amazing for me to be able to pass this on to the next generation. And they were playing with more passion and power than I've ever seen them play in their lives. And some of those kids I've been teaching for 8 years. They came from the 90s, we're doing something completely different. So now it's like, okay, this band's like amazing because they were super weird. I'm like, I hadn't listened to anything like it at all. And so now I'm using it as like a huge inspiration for like a bunch of stuff.
Brainiac's a band that's been really inspiring to me from the sonic standpoint.
You can kind of hear that when other people took those influences and incorporated them. And Trent Reznor, I guess was one of them.
I don't think most people even realize that it just has a stamp all over lots of pop culture.
In the landscape, when I look at the last 25 years, they definitely inspired me. Make us all dream to find that kind of magic in the future.
The impact is immeasurable still. For people that like any of the bands I'm with, I will always try to sit down and say, if you like what I do, you're gonna like what this did for me.
I think the main inspiration that I got is just let go of all your insecurities. Just chase the wild sparks. Just pushed all the walls out a little bit, or just made you realize there aren't any walls.
The music is always there.
And as different as he was creatively, as a person, he was just very unique. And yeah, I don't know, charismatic and smart. And I don't know, it's somebody I could talk to. And I hope the film brings out some of hanging out with Tim. That, yeah, I mean, I really miss that.
You know, I think Tim was extremely and uniquely gifted. I really do. I think he was just an amazing mind, a musical mind. And in fact, to this day, my favorite Brainiac songs I don't even play on. Those are just Tim. Those are just Tim and a 4-track and just his brilliant mind.
Now I can finally, after all these years, really listen to the music. I couldn't for a long time. You know, I could watch it in just small amounts, and then I would just almost feel like I was suffocating because I missed him so much. And a lot of that has changed just recently, and I'm hearing a lot of stories about how he inspired people to follow their dreams, and that just feels great. So I think this whole process, the documentary, the tribute concert, is just, for me, it's been so healing, and I just feel a lot of gratitude. I'm just really lucky I got to be his mom. So it's I don't know how I got off on all that, but.
It's gonna waste our time a bit. All right, thank you. Yeah. Okay, so can you, just so when we lose the label on the tape, 20 years from now when they're doing the big documentary, all right, can you give me your name?
My name's Tim, and I play the synthesizer, and I sing.
If we got to shine in that period of time, I think that was a great time to shine. You're just like the guy, like in the Western, you're the guy who comes from parts unknown. You do what you're gonna do. And then you disappear into the sunset. Yeah.
Good game, guys.
Can you just clap for us?
I can. I, Stephen Frank Albini, being of sound mind, hereby allow, what's your thing called?
Give me 1 second.
Brainiac documentary to use my likeness for all eternity, for anything, forever, in perpetuity. Don't give a fuck.
Juan keeps telling us, what did Juan say?
Guy who had lived in there before had used it as like kind of a sex dungeon.
That's cool.
Marco, think.
Over the top kind of rock and roll thing, like
yeah.
Fuck you. The entirety of the 90s is kind of a fog.
I think I went to a show with them. I don't remember what we were watching, but we went someplace together. God, I wish I knew what it was.
I might not have been there.
I heard you were there.
I was there.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. I probably was there.
Just fucking pop another pill, bro.
Rolling.
Just keep it rolling.
No regrets.
No regrets.